What's up, everybody?
Hold on. Hold on.
Time out. 30-second.
Our production team's screwing up.
These freaking interns are terrible. Short week. Happy Memorial Day to everybody. We're back. Greg and Brian here. Iller and Filthier, episode 6. Brought to you by the Tossing Salad podcast. I'm your host, Greg Eisenhower, with my buddy Brian from the STO. And tonight, we're going to talk some Apple's terrible top 100 music list, and I'm going to put my professor hat on and teach Brian a little bit about some heavy metal. So stay tuned for episode 6.
Hey, Brian.
So, what are you doing, man?
Well, I sat back and thought about the things we used to do. We had a lot of fun.
You really want to do this with me?
Bro, you know I do.
It's just a pretty sick beat, really, at the end of the day.
We're going to have to do an audio check here with the people that are watching right now. Greg, your audio was going out as you were talking. The intro was going.
Oh, weird. Okay.
To me, it sounded like you were going in and out. Did anybody else, were you guys listening or not?
Jeff, you on there? Can you hear
Just so
me?
we can take care of that before we
Jeff?
get the actual into the meat and potatoes of the show.
Sorry about that. I don't know what would be up with that.
We were just talking about Greg on the last episode. Jeff's saying it sounded good, so okay. Well, maybe it was just
Cool.
on my
Thanks,
end.
buddy.
The last episode that Greg was like, my mic wasn't even plugged in on his
But I
side.
sounded good, though. I listened back to some of our production meeting, and it sounded really good.
All
We
right,
got new
let everybody
interns
know.
for the summer. Yeah, new interns are just terrible so far. They're from Kansas.
All right, there we go. We got the banner
Yeah.
up and everything.
We are, how you doing, man? It's been a bit. We took a little time off. You were busy last week.
Busy a little bit. So I'm a photographer, videographer for my own business, and a lot of times you got a lot of things going on, and then you'll go weeks with absolutely nothing going on. But last week was one of my bigger projects, and it's one of those things that unfortunately I have to have all of my computer resources devoted to my projects because of all of the video files and taking up all the space, and it's all the technical stuff nobody wants to hear about. So I couldn't really do anything. And so Greg, you're like, let's just take a week off. And that really helped out. So, but we're back.
Yeah, we're back. There's been a ton of controversy over the past, few weeks. So we're going to get into that tonight a little bit, just so many things, but we got to talk about this list eventually. But yeah. And you had it's graduation season. Today was the last day of school for my kids. So summer's kind of officially starting, which means I'll have kids at home while I'm trying to work and stuff. So that's going to suck.
You think we'll get some of the Eisenhower clan in the background, or I'm always wondering if like Rachel would ever get on to do a little newlywed game or something.
Yeah, I told her I wanted to do that. Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago. Yeah, she's in. Yeah, I told her I'd have to give her some, teach her how to be online. She wants to do OnlyFans, so I feel like this would be a good stepping off point.
Well, it's all about interacting with your viewers and stuff. Tonight, I mean, it's actually pretty cool. We got Richard Devine out here, Jeff Moon,
Ricky.
who's been out.
Jeff, yeah.
Amanda's here, the ever hopeful gardener.
She's Amanda. I just want to say something to you really quick.
Oh, Lord.
Hysteria.
That's from
episode 2. I think
we
it
were
was
talking
2.
about the what was the
hair metal. I mean, it's kind of the stepping off point. Yeah, 80s hair metal night. We ranked our top 5. Brian and I put a draft together. It was the week of the draft, and we put our draft board together of our top 5 80s hair metal albums. And so tonight, hysteria. It's hysteria. Damn it! Did I say it wrong again? Man,
Jeff's calling you out on it also.
Yeah.
I think
And
Amanda called you out that night. Jeff's calling you out, and it's a little bit outside of my knowledge base. Like I know basically the bands a little bit, the hair bands, and I was like, I always pronounced it hysteria, but I guess Greg knows more than I do. Maybe it is hysteria.
I'm overthinking it. It's like you know how to say it, and then I can't say it right. It's crazy. Yeah. And Jeff, it's your fault that my mic wasn't working the other night when Brian and I got together, because I had to read. Jeff stayed with me a couple weeks ago for his birthday. He's 67, so he came up for. Just kidding. I'm kidding. He's 59. No, I'm kidding. I think he's 53, maybe 4.
Anything over 50, we all just lump them together, don't we?
This is and I got to wear my cool shirt my friends gave me. My 40. I actually +2 now, so it should have a.
I was going to say that had to have been a few years ago.
Well, not a few years, you dick.
Hey, that's one of the funny things about when Greg and I were at the University of Missouri together, and I've mentioned this on my podcast when we had Greg on when we first met, and we never quite knew if Greg was like a TA, an RA. He was like one of the older students. We're like, dude, you're like 10 years older than us, but hanging out. And
Yep. You guys were like, is he here for Dad's weekend? The fraternities or sorority? What's happening? But yeah, so Jeff was here, and I had the room. I had to have a room for him. So my studio turns into a spare room. So when I put it all back together, I forgot to plug a cord in.
So when people like that come over, we have to make that an opportunity to get other people on the show, right?
Yes.
Like, indeed. Could you not get Jeff on as a quick guest and we do a little spot with him?
Yeah, we could have. We should have. But yeah, we were overserved most of that weekend.
Jeff said he had the room bugged. He probably had a hidden camera watching you get undressed.
Yeah, they're in the form of cats. I have one robot cat that looks like a real cat. But we can take a poll, but do we want to see Jeff undressed? I mean, I don't know. Like,
I've seen you undressed.
Wait, you have?
Yeah.
Lords of Acid, everybody. Great album. Check them out.
We've seen a lot of things.
Dude, someday Brian and I will get into our rollerblade team that we had in college. So that could be like maybe one of those special edition, like 2-part series type things.
Those were good times.
Yeah,
and
they were good times.
I'm sure there's plenty of sorority girls that probably have a podcast now also, because
talking about us,
those guys in the Mizzou rollerblade team out in front of the sorority house.
Yeah. I feel like nowadays they've just been awful. We were lucky nobody was filming that shit back in the day.
Richard Devine, pics or it didn't happen. If you're referring to me seeing Greg, I'm gonna say there actually are pics. And just out of respect to Greg and his family and
my other families
and anybody else that's out there, let's say, it's just not going to see the light of day.
That's
but there
right,
are pics. I'm a photographer. There's pics.
Damn, and now I'm like, what did I do?
There are pics.
Yeah, I have some good pics over the years. That's for sure.
Well, let's get into the list, because I'm itching. The message I got from Greg was that he was hot and bothered by something that just got released, and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? What's going on? It was this Apple Top 100 albums of all time, right?
Yeah, it dropped last week. I came across it. I think they'd released like 10 a week or something. Not really sure how it came out, but it looked like the last 10 dropped. And when I checked it out, I kind of was expecting to see what you would think you'd see, and it wasn't like that at all. So let me go through.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen. I saw a brief image that Greg sent me so I can make like the thumbnail for this week's episode, but I purposely haven't dived in or dove in. I don't know what the word is. Dove in. I didn't pay attention too close to the list because I thought it'd be cool that we show up tonight. Greg is hot and bothered, and I'd like to kind of look at it for the first time with all of you just to kind of get my actual reaction to it.
Yeah. Would you like me to, do you want to hit the top 10 or do you want me to scan the list so you can kind of see and then land on, and then we'll get to 10?
Let's do the top 10.
Okay.
And then, we can look at that and then we'll go through, because I'm kind of curious what you're hot and bothered about.
So many things, and I don't get hot and bothered very much.
Now, let me ask you this. Are you hot and bothered on the top 10? Or are you hot and bothered on the list overall?
No, I think the list overall is directionally accurate. But the top 10 bugs me, and just the list in general.
All right. Well, Greg's working on getting the list up here. You want me to go ahead and put it up?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me get there. It's a lot of scrolling. Sometimes it bounces around. There we go. Yeah, let me read you some of the criteria that we saw. I think do you see it?
I see your thing. You want me to put it up?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. So first of all, the voters, and I don't know who voted, but it sounds like it was media folks and music. It was writers. I think some musicians. I just would be curious. I mean, obviously there's a skewed view here, but the voters' criteria was albums that represented a cultural moment for an artist or genre.
Okay.
Complete thoughts, not just hits. So an album that has a complete thought, not just hits. So, Dark Side of the Moon, maybe a great example of that. Represents culture in lyrics and production. So maybe that's when they say represents culture and production. So maybe it's, like new technology or something. Maybe this is what I was thinking. Inspired a generation to create more music, which is pretty much any album, I think, could do that. Best in storytelling, production, and musicianship. So they took all that into consideration. So the storytelling, the production, I agree with that, right? I do agree with that. When they're talking a good album, it is everything, right? It's how it's made, how they played it, the storytelling. Timeless, reaches beyond its genre. And that's, you can see Nevermind up there. I feel like that might be a good example of that. And then, that's it. That's kind of the criteria.
I can already tell you, I'm going to interrupt there for just a second.
Yeah, we're good.
So the interesting part of this, and why I'm looking forward to this show, is we've already established technically music-wise, your background in music overall, you just have a little bit more technical knowledge and the background of a lot of this stuff. I'm more of I just like what I hear, right?
Right.
So when you were going over that list of how they came up with this based off of the criteria, I think after the second thing you mentioned, I completely tuned out. Not tuned out of you talking, but I'm like, it just sounds like mumbo jumbo. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it that you have certain criteria and that's what is going to be based off of. But I almost wonder I see it and I'm like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Because who's really, I don't know. You said it's music critics and musicians. And I
think, producers like Zane Lowe's pretty famous, like podcast guy. He's friends with like every artist. Like he knows them pretty well. There's a TikTok of him explaining this. He was on like one of the morning shows, maybe Today's Show or something, kind of explaining it. But
crazy hair dude, who the barefoot crazy hair dude with Paul McCartney, is he on it?
No, I don't know. They never said who it is.
What was his name?
Rick Rubin.
Like,
yeah, him.
I'd be like, I'd be interested to see what he thinks.
Exactly.
I don't know anything about Rick Rubin other than when I saw him with Paul McCartney on that McCartney 321, and I've heard people kind of talk about him in the last few years. I know he goes back and he's like,
oh yeah,
huge, works with
Yeah.
all kinds of artists, making them like gigantic.
He basically launched the Beastie Boys. I mean, he was really that was probably one of his peak thing. You know, he would produce the Beastie Boys out of his college dorm.
And he has no technical skills. Like he can't really play anything. He just knows what sounds good.
Yeah.
And the guy is just he appeal. I'm like, okay, this cat's kind of interesting. If it's somebody like that, I'll take a listen. But I'm curious. I just think it sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, let's see. Let's just see.
I think that it's a little bit of a narrow view, my guess. And again, like we talked about the other day, it's made for clicks. Most people I've seen, the reaction is this list is awful. I mean, you got personal bias too, right? Like I have
good point.
I listen to music differently being a musician and learning how to produce music and record music. But I'm still very, very new to it, and I'm very amateur, right? But I have appreciation for music, but I don't have appreciation for like a wide range of music. I mean, I like all the popular types of music, but when people ask me as a drummer, like, who's your favorite drummer? I always feel dumb because it's always these guys that are like, they're like jazz drummers. They're naming off all these like guys that are like artists, you know, and I'm like, I have no clue who you're talking about. I like Tommy Lee, you know, and I'm like throwing out, you know, it's like, his
penis was big. I like,
yeah, right. And, but my point of it is that I get most of the albums on here. And again, if we scroll through later, you'll find ones you think, but when I see this top 10, I'm not surprised to see a Beyonce album on the list. Maybe it's a little too high. I don't find her super groundbreaking. Nirvana, I expect to see in the top 10. Amy Winehouse, I want to get more into her because I've never heard anybody say anything bad about. I mean, she's one of those artists. Like everybody likes her, like all the bands.
I get that, but is that because she's dead?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
It could be like she is on one of the like TikToks I saw talking about this list. People just talk about they just wish they could have seen more of her. Probably the same way they talk about Nirvana, but she was mad talented, and like I said, it's artists like her. All the singers, musicians, that's what I mean when I say artists, they like her.
Okay.
So I know there's something there, right? Like, and then I don't know Kendrick Lamar very well. I always hear, so seeing him that high, and I read a lot of comments about that his other albums should be there, not this one maybe. So again, I don't know his stuff very well. I know of him. You know what I mean? Because I mean that's a little more in your genre.
I've heard. Okay, look, I'm looking at the top 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 right off the bat, and let me throw this out there also. For the show, I can act, a little outraged here and there, and it's all for fun and entertainment. And I love discussing this, and especially knowing that Greg and I have kind of completely different tastes. If we were stuck on an island, which this would be a great show for us to do one time, and say, okay, Greg and Brian come up with 5 albums you're going to take onto the island.
Yeah.
Of your favorite music, which one would you take?
Yeah.
And we would have 5 completely different albums because we're just into different things. So I can't tell Greg and say, well, his tastes are worse than mine or whatever. I know I like what I like. I know every one of those artists, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. I couldn't tell you, like, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of any one of them. Kendrick Lamar, just off the top of my head, just because that's been recent in the last couple weeks with Drake. Okay. But to be a top 10 album,
is he like a Compton guy, right? Is he
He's
like
from Compton,
new
and
generation of like the
ton
West
of Grammys
Coast, right?
and well respected within the culture and the community.
Right.
I know the importance of Beyonce. I know a lot of people love the Lemonade album. It just doesn't do anything for me. Nirvana's another one. Nirvana doesn't do anything for me. And growing up in the early 90s, and I know like Greg's like, oh man. Because I would imagine you're a big Nirvana fan, or right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And more so, More so now. Honestly, Pearl Jam spoke to me way more. Pearl Jam for me was a little more of the grunge breaking through. Um, and so Amanda said groundbreaking. Yeah, it's more than that. It's not just groundbreaking because there's multiple albums. You know, there's several artists with 2 albums on here. Um, but yeah, a Pearl
So
Jam to me spoke to me more at the time than Nirvana. But now that I've had time and I've gotten older and listened to it, I get the Nirvana, like what it did and how it changed music, kind of, and how influential it was.
isn't there a metal album called Hard to Swallow? I was talking about Amanda, the Ever Hopeful Gardener. The name on the
Yeah.
list should be more specific.
Yeah.
Like top 100 groundbreaking albums. To say it's the top 100 and leave it at that is hard to swallow.
Yeah, Hard to Swallow. Yeah, Mega Muff, I believe, put out that album.
Isn't that you?
Hard to Swallow. Yeah, yeah,
So, but going back to Nirvana, I know that they were huge for a certain group of people growing up in the 90s. I hated it, just wasn't my thing. One, I look back on the early 90s and I'm like, oh, it was the grunge era. The girls that were at high school when I was that age, they all dressed grunge. I was like, that's what I get to grow up with in high school, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, you know,
80s
now or
was way
whatever. The
better.
girls, they're dressing completely different or whatever.
Yeah,
But Nirvana just, I respect and understand how big they were. I don't have a problem with them being top 10, top 20, whatever you would put them at. It's just not my thing. Amy Winehouse, okay, fine. Kendrick, okay, fine. Stevie Wonder. I don't know. I couldn't tell you a song that was on here, but that's on me.
yeah, that's a big one. I think that's a double album, and Songs in the Key of Life. I've just heard people always speak about that, so I do get that one. That one, I mean, that one maybe could be even higher. That one is an album that people talk about a lot.
What's a song that was on in that Stevie Wonder album that I would know?
Oh, let me pull it.
And I'm not saying anything on that. I was like, there's probably a handful of songs I'm like, oh my God, I love that song. I'm just not familiar with it. And I would think that if you're doing top 100 albums of all time, somebody like myself who's not, I'm very superficial in music.
Isn't She Lovely is on there?
Okay. Amanda's saying Superstition might be on that one.
No, I don't think it is. So I think it's a very influential album, but it doesn't have his hits per se. But when you look at, I mean, I have a feeling that Apple's kind of skewed right now. Yeah, I think Superstition on different albums. Sir Duke, I don't recognize that. As I Wish, I don't recognize a lot of the songs on there, but they're pretty high on his playlist. But I just wonder if that's skewed now that this album's out, and I'm guessing the top songs gets adjusted by the algorithm, right?
Right.
Like Higher Ground's not on that. Sign Seal Delivers not on that.
So going back to what I said initially with a lot of this stuff here, as opposed to me coming on here and being like upset about this or that, I can put a little bit of that on for entertainment purposes for our show and stuff, you know, Greg?
Yeah.
I'm looking at something like this, a list like this, as a discovery method that, okay, these 10 albums are on there. Maybe I'll go and listen to a few of those that maybe like Nirvana. I'd like to revisit that and just say, okay, I'm in a different period of my life, and I'd like to hear what that's all about, because Dave Grohl.
Yeah, I would love to go down that rabbit hole with you. I would love to do a show on that.
I've seen him interviewed several times. Yeah, I like him personally, and I like the stories that he tells. So I'm like, okay, well, I'd like to give Nirvana another chance, another listen.
But I'll do 3 albums.
I'll do it with any one of these albums. It's just curious. On my first take of just looking here from 10 through 6, I'm just like, okay, and interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed that. Am I upset? I mean, no, but I'm like, I'll maybe Greg and I will be like, okay, of the 10 that are here, maybe everybody pick 3 that are the most controversial. Let's go listen to them. Yeah.
And Amanda, like you brought up, talking about groundbreaking, whatever, when I look through some of the other criteria, I do get it. I mean, I try to think of some of these things from like a recording standpoint. Cultural, they mention cultural a lot. But to me, when they start saying some of that, that's where you lose some of the stuff that I like. Like one thing I noticed on this list, there's not a lot of country. There's probably not as much rock as I'd like. There's probably not even enough hip hop on there, maybe.
Well, what's the definition of cultural?
I don't know. I mean, like Nirvana to me would be one, right? Like you said, the grunge movement started. That all happened. We saw that video. That album killed hair metal. Going back to like our second episode, you know.
Whether you like that kind of music or not,
Yeah,
I can appreciate the fact that it was a
Yeah.
huge moment,
right.
early '90s.
Yeah. Like dress. I mean, everything, right? The music from
Okay.
that time changed what we wore. You know, all of that. That became cool, right? It became cool to look like the grunge look, right? Like, so I try to think about that when I'm looking at all this stuff. And again, to your point, I don't know a lot of these bands, and I did listen to them. Like last week when I got the list, I listened to some of the albums. I listened to Amy Winehouse. I play one of her songs in my band, but I haven't really listened to her catalog. And she's somebody that I would like to dive into.
I'm just curious, and I'm not being mean to Amy Winehouse fans. If she were not dead, and I'm not trying to be callous or anything. If she were not dead, would she be top 10?
Yeah, I
It's
don't know.
kind of like how some people have an
There's a
issue with
mysterious
Kobe
stuff,
being regarded as a GOAT or one of the greatest of all time, and it's almost like you can't disagree or say anything because he's dead. I love Kobe. Kobe's my favorite basketball player. But I almost wonder is if you die, does that bump you up the list?
It does a little bit. There's a mystery about it. Like both of them. I mean, having Amy and Kurt together at 8 and 9 there is pretty cool for that reason, right? Like there is something about that. Should we?
They both committed suicide, right?
Or
was one a drug overdose?
Well, yeah. I mean, Amy, I believe, killed herself through maybe not. I don't know if it was suicide per se, but
here's kind of a dark idea: is like coming up with the top 10 albums of people that have killed themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know the 27 Club, right?
No.
Are you familiar with that? Okay.
No.
Then we got to do that. So there is a.
That's not being mean to say, right?
No, they're both in the 27 Club. The number of people who have died at the age of 27 starts with Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, I believe Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, the guy.
Okay, stop right there. We have to make that a show.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
We have to make that a show because right there you gave me chills because that is interesting. It's all artists that I don't particularly am a fan of right now, but it would be an interesting thing. Jeff is saying she had a unique sound that set her apart.
She did.
I've heard that before. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. She had this like club, like swanky thing. And she actually, quite honestly, started kind of a movement with women singers at that time. That you started to see a few that kind of swanky voice. I'm trying to have a hard time to describe it, but yeah, she started a movement to a degree.
All right. Well, let's see the top 5.
All right. Well, if you want to get pissed off now, it just makes me mad looking at it.
So if I can read this right, Blonde from Frank Ocean, Purple Rain, Prince and the Revolution, Abbey Road, The Beatles,
Thumbs Up,
Thriller, Michael Jackson, and The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah.
What's
your thoughts? Before I get mad,
off the top of my head, I would say, okay, 3 of those I would have not predicted, but like if we were coming in and saying, okay, what do you predict to be the 10 in the top 10?
Yep.
I would say Thriller.
Yes.
And Purple Rain.
Yep.
Abbey Road. I love that album, but again, I'm a recent Beatles fan as of the last few years. Right now, I think they're absolutely brilliant. I love the albums that I've listened to. I got into it because of the Peter Jackson restoration, Get Back, is when I was introduced to the Beatles. And I know that sounds funky, that it doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you.
But the Beatles, to me, I was just like, oh, it was something in the history books. And I thought that when people say the Beatles are like their favorite band, I kind of rolled my eyes in that, well, that's just kind of a safe pick. That's kind of in vogue to say because that's what you're supposed to say. I get it now.
Yeah.
I get it now. Abbey Road, I love that album.
Yeah.
Top 10, I can't argue. I'm glad to see them.
Yeah.
There.
I definitely agree with 2, 3, and 4. I think they could be 1, 2, and 3. My biggest complaint is 1 and 5, but yeah, I would expect Abbey Road to be there. I would expect Thriller to be there, and I would expect Purple Rain to be there. Those are 3 amazing, amazing albums. So not surprised at all. Ricky, you mentioned, it should be number 1. Apparently, for 40 years, Thriller was number 1, and just recently, for whatever reason, they pushed Lauryn Hill to the top. Which makes no sense, because have you ever seen Lauryn Hill on a list anywhere else of where she was 2 or 3 or set? You know what I mean? Like, and it's a good album.
I don't know if I know any song off of that. I agree that it's just weird to kind of see, but obviously the ones that you have issues with.
Frank Ocean,
two that are relatively newer, probably a generation before us.
Yeah.
Thriller, Purple Rain are pretty much us as 80s babies, or if you're like Amanda and you're adamant that you have to be born in that decade, then 70s babies. Is it bias because you're a little bit older that you're like, there's no way Lauryn Hill or Frank Ocean?
It bugs me just because I've never seen them on any other list, like any other, just things that come across social media or whatever it might be. I feel like we could all be like, okay, what's the top 20 songs or albums? And everybody'd be like, you get pretty close, right? But I will say,
that's Gen Z probably grew up with Lauryn Hill and Frank Ocean and know those albums more than we would.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know them, and so I do get that. But that's where I'm like, okay, I like a Kendrick Lamar. I've heard about him. You're right. I mean, we are getting to that point where I'm starting to not know musicians on Saturday Night Live. That's when it's getting close to being over for you. When it's like, oh shit, I don't know who the music guest is on Saturday Night Live. But man, Frank Ocean and Lauryn. So the Lauryn Hill album though is very good. I did listen to it last week and it was great. It sounds awesome. So again, culture, production, storytelling, that's a big one with this. I think the album kind of tells a story. I still haven't heard, it sounds like she's been very influential to this day, but I still haven't heard like a modern, like pop star, modern star, whatever reference, like, oh yeah, Lauryn Hill's.
And is that R&B?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, if you would know,
I'm an R&B guy, but
you would know
more of the 80s, 90s R&B. I don't think Greg is an R&B guy, but obviously he's saying if it's a good album.
I mean, it's great. It's great. I listened to it and it was cool, man. It's a cool listening album.
But not a number 1 of all time.
Yeah.
Is what the issue.
Yeah. That's what, you'll recognize it when you hear it. It was a little groundbreaking, I think, for her to come out of, because she was part of the Fugees, right?
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
So she was part of the Fugees
which is a group that I didn't particularly care for one way or the other, but okay.
But it was different. I think this was your first, like, if I'm going back in time and remembering, this was probably when like R&B and hip hop started getting a little away from like the gangster rap stuff and became a little more like folky. Like I'm thinking of like that Tennessee song. Who was that? That just a little different vibe. And right. I think it hit on, and she was female. I mean, she was probably one of the more powerful, strong women to put out an album in that kind of genre.
This was late 90s, early 2000s?
I think so. Let me see. It's 1998. is what it says on Apple from this
So
album.
that's around the time Mary J. Blige is around, Faith
Yep.
Evans is around, which I were more of a fan of their music, but
Yeah.
okay. I what I take notice is that Greg went and listened to this album and says that that it's a good album.
Yeah. No, it's a good. I mean, it's chill. Right mood. I was mowing the grass when I was listening to it. Probably not the right mood, but I liked hearing it. It's very good sounding.
Okay. Well, there's definitely an interest that I have in several of these, and I'm going to give it a shot to discover.
Yeah.
I think just off the top of my head and looking back, and I think I'm a pretty reasonable person and taking all of history into account or whatever, but it is hard to fathom that you have something that's bigger than Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
As far as impact on everything.
When I listen to your point, like, I feel like you could pick a number of Beatles records. Like, you could probably argue is Abbey Road the best Beatles out? I know that's the one people talk about a lot.
Splitting hairs, in my opinion.
Yeah. But I love Purple Rain. I listened to Thriller the other day too.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't hit me as like it did. But as a kid, when that came out, man, that was like, I never could stop listening to it. I mean, but listen to it now, it's like, it's a lot of pop hits. I mean, it had a lot of hits on it.
Prince, I respect more and more as I get older.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And that's because I didn't understand Prince. He's an actual artist, right?
Oh, yeah.
Would you consider like an actual? He's not one to where he had a bunch of ghostwriters and then synthesize or faked his singing and couldn't play any. I mean, like, he played everything, wrote everything.
Yeah.
I was just too young to appreciate it. And a lot of the things that he was talking about, I didn't understand until later on in life. And now I'm like, God damn, he's a little freaky, but he's a big freak.
Yeah. He's little and freaky.
He's sexy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate that even more now, and I understand it more now. And I didn't like Prince growing up. I know it sounds kind of weird. His hits were fine.
Yeah.
But I never really fully understood or appreciated him until as I got older. And now I'm like, wow. I mean, that's to have lost him among other artists and everything. I'm like, okay, he was something special. Michael as well. We're not getting into all the other stuff that's associated with Michael.
Yeah.
But I think most of us probably can come together and say Thriller definitely should be number one.
Yeah. I mean, he took a photo of that photo when you open up the album. I have it here somewhere. He's got like a big tiger with him. Prince might be the best guitar player out there. He was ridiculous. I recommend anyone listening, and you especially, Brian, just because you like the song and you like the band, one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performances.
The George Harrison one.
Yeah.
I already know what you're talking about.
Yeah. When Prince played My Guitar Slowly Gently Weeps.
Yeah.
And the other guys are just staring at him because it's maybe one of the most badass guitar solos I've ever seen. And he just kills it.
And it's not just average people up there.
Oh, I think Tom Petty, George. Yeah, George. Was it George I think George was up there, or had he passed?
Well, no, George was dead. So
okay,
it was his.
So I was seeing things.
Yeah, it was his. I think it was his induction,
like a tribute
or something, something like that. But he was gone.
Right. Yeah.
And Tom Petty. I think Jeff Wynne was up there.
Yeah.
Danny Harrison. So his son was there. There was another guitarist.
A bunch of famous. Yeah, and it was amazing though.
When Prince comes in at the end and kind of takes over the show, and they all you can just see, and he's smiling at them. I get chills. I remember watching that video, not understanding. I wasn't a George Harrison fan yet. Didn't really know much about the Beatles.
Yeah.
I didn't really appreciate what was going on in that video until the last couple of years, and I just went back to watch it. It's funny you mentioned it, and I'm like, that's one of my favorite performances to watch on YouTube right now.
when he smiles, Prince gives this like little smirky smile, like, yeah, I'm fucking killing it. And he
Right.
just,
And
he's
they're kind of giving
shredding
him
it.
the okay to keep
Yeah,
going. Like, hey,
yeah, yeah.
you're killing it. Yeah.
And if you
Loved
watch
it.
slowly at the end, he just throws the guitar in the air and walks off like he always does and just disappears. Yeah.
So this is interesting. The top 10, I would say, kind of is 6 through 10 for sure. I'm just like, I'm not sure what's going on. And then 1 through 5, I'll be on board with it and say I'm not quite sure what Lauryn Hill's doing at number 1. I'd be shocked if
It's a
she was
bold
top
statement.
10,
Yeah.
top 20.
I'd rather see her bump Beyonce out. When I scroll this, can you see it? Is it scrolling with you?
Oh yeah, we
Okay.
can see it as you're scrolling.
Okay, I just won't change tabs. I think there might be some porn on that one. Be careful.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you're showing.
So OnlyFans, if you guys see that on that tab, we're trying to find some ceiling fans.
Right.
And so yeah, I just assumed a website called OnlyFans
is like bulk ordering.
Yeah,
fans.
yeah. It turns out, there's a lot of like videos and stuff on there. It's weird.
As far as this top 10 though, I am on board. Like I will make a list and spend the next week or so listening to these albums.
Yeah,
I'm going to do the Lauryn Hill one, and you said it's good.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear that. I'll give the Frank Ocean one a listen.
Yeah, I don't think I know anything about him. My buddy, I'm going to shout out my friend Dave, my good buddy Dave Clark, DC. We were talking about this the other day, and we were saying like we were talking about Limp Bizkit and how Limp Bizkit got a lot of flack. Maybe they were made fun of a little bit in their era, but they're now headlining festivals and like 20, 30, 40,000 people are watching these shows. I mean, like big festivals. And we were talking about somebody like Frank Ocean. Like in 10 years, is Frank Ocean going to headline a festival? Is Frank Ocean ever going to go to, Coachella?
But that's where we have to be careful of. That's not the criteria that they went by.
No, it's not. But I mean, you would think there'd be a big enough following, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like Michael Jackson could, if the Beatles came back, they'd sell out a festival. Prince would sell out a festival if he went to one. Prince would probably have his own festival.
I know. I know what you're saying. I'm trying to present maybe a little bit of an argument as to why they can't. I'm watching as you're scrolling, so kind of go.
So rumors, one of the best albums ever. Again, an amazing sounding record. Radiohead is a band I don't get, but have heard nobody really say bad things about. A lot. Again, tons of people love this
as a
band.
top 12 though.
Yeah, interesting. That's not surprising though. That's a critic favorite. Like these guys. Okay. These are Radiohead, and that album is a very, very much a critic favorite. People rave about it. I just don't get them. I can't get into them. I don't know why. Not surprised to see Jay-Z. I don't know if that maybe I've heard like that album.
See, this is going to be my problem with this. I do find this interesting, but a lot of these albums I'm just not familiar with. I may know a song or two.
I mean, this Marvin Gaye album I've heard about, Adele, that's a great one. Not surprised to see, a Dylan album. Taylor, maybe a little high on the list, but also, I mean, you can't deny, she's going to be on there, right? This is a legendary record too. Pet Sounds. People rave about Pet Sounds.
Right. So hold on. So you skipped over Dr. Dre, The Chronic.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about cultural shifts of everything, and a guy that went from Compton clubs dressed as a glittery doctor to a billionaire and has influenced the music. The Chronic for me, and this is where Greg and I just grew up differently. The Chronic for me was huge.
Yeah.
I would expect that based off the criteria that you mentioned, I expect that to be
I would put
top
that
20.
In the top 10. Yeah.
For sure.
I think it belongs higher. I'm completely with you. I have mad respect for him and this album. To me, this was the Nirvana of hip hop.
It was
at that time, right?
That was so. When I said that I wasn't into Nirvana, this is what I was listening to.
Yeah, and I feel like this was the game changer, right? This was the the West Coast sound of rap was this album,
right.
and everything after it was because of this album. So I agree with you. That should be way higher.
I remember going to all the black guys on my basketball team, and I asked every single one of them. I'm like, dude, what does G mean? What when he says nothing but a G thing? What does that mean? And they all gave me like different answers, and then I was like, you guys don't know either, because I thought it was supposed to be like gangster,
Right.
and then it was like, well, that's not it. And I'm like, well, then what else does it mean? And just the answers that they all gave me, and I was like, you guys don't know either. It was just funny, but it was, I thought that was huge. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, not surprised. Bruce, yep, another Beatles shows up. Daft Punk seems a little high, but again, that's a certain kind of, that DJ style music. So I know there's a lot of respect for those guys. Bowie, Miles Davis, Kanye. I'm not surprised you finally see Led Zeppelin on here.
I have that Miles Davis in my record collection. Nice. I don't think I've played it, but it's something my grandpa had in his that I inherited.
Cool. Yeah.
So you better believe that this weekend I'm going to throw that on there because I have it.
Yeah. It's, again, yeah, I'm with you. I haven't listened to him, but I know that name, and I know that he's legendary, right? If I've heard of Miles Davis, there's a reason. You know what I mean? Like
this is why I'm looking at this more, this top 100 more as a discovery and an opportunity to go hear some other music as opposed to being trying to argue this or that. But I get it. So yeah, keep
I'm with you. Another great listen for those of you out there, or you too, Brian, is there's a guy on YouTube that I follow. He has a great channel. His name's Rick Beato. He does awesome videos about music. He has a top 50, I think, of the best sounding songs ever recorded.
Yeah.
That was another cool one for me to do discovery.
Okay.
Because I went and listened to, he breaks down, and he goes through a wide range of music genres. It's not just rock. He's kind of a rock guy, but he goes through everything. And I was listening to bands. I was like Peter Gabriel's on, just he did it from he's a producer, and he went from the producing standpoint of like, this is a beautiful sounding album for whatever reason.
Right.
And that's another great listen. But Zeppelin should be higher. Every rock band that exists talks about Led Zeppelin.
That's kind of next on my list. Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, stuff like this is all stuff that I've heard of. I never got into, but with record collecting and all that stuff, I'm going to give it another chance. So
I like, A Tribe Called Quest on here again, artist, critic favorite.
I never got into them in the 90s. It was in my wheelhouse of music. It just didn't hit for me.
Yeah.
But
they're I'd put them in the same category as like Lauryn and Hill. Is just a little bit of that different vibe, right? A Tribe Called Quest. I think it was a little more positive message rap versus the gangster rap. You know what I mean?
Right.
Billie, I think she's the Nirvana of her generation.
Really? Okay.
Really just super creative, unique, different.
I see her on social media everywhere, people talking about her. I don't know anything about her. So interesting. Okay.
She's just very talented. So I respect her for what she's doing. She's creative. And Dave Grohl even called her that. Dave Grohl said his daughters view her as people used to view Nirvana.
Okay.
And I kind of agree with that. Notorious is on here. Atlantis, that goes back to our college days. That was one of my favorite albums when it came out. I loved it.
Yeah, I didn't at the time like Alanis Morissette, but I respect the fact that the talent and everything for her.
Yeah.
Back in the day, Ready to Die, It Takes a Nation of Million, Public Enemy. Those are the albums that I was listening to. So this is stuff that I recognize the songs and I know the albums.
Yeah.
So
another Radiohead. Again, I don't know if they're worthy of 2 on this list, but
I need to go listen to that because
I think I know anything on Radiohead. OK Computer is the one I hear most about. This, I've always heard London Calling. That's a big influential album for a ton of musicians, rock like current day. That's a punk influence. Wu-Tang belongs on there. Carole King, Nas, Aretha, Outkast. All these I totally agree with. again, it's the order. You could debate the order all day.
Sure.
There's Drake shows up at 47. You got Bob Marley, of course, in there. U2, Beastie Boys. That's a big album people talk a lot about.
Is Paul's Boutique bigger than their License
Yeah,
to Ill?
it is from the sense of like creatively and the sound and stuff. Again, it's more of like a critic and artist choice. But yeah, that Paul's Boutique gets more recognition. I'm like you, I really like License to Ill, but yeah, that one is very well done, I think. There's our Appetite.
That right there, and I'll tell you, if it wasn't for you and our episode on Appetite for Destruction,
episode 3,
and Guns
maybe?
N' Roses, I would be like very indifferent to them being at 52. Now that I know just how good that album is, okay,
it belongs on the list, probably higher, I think. The Cure, again, all these are bands like I agree. They all had Oasis had their moment. D'Angelo. That was, used to play that to your wife, I think, when you guys were in college.
It's huge in the R&B circles. I wasn't into him.
Okay.
But if it was an R&B list or something, I acknowledge that he should probably be on there. Arctic
Monkeys, another band like Radiohead. I just I don't get them. I don't understand it. Jimmy.
All Eyes on Me. That's just
huge,
like,
right?
That's like Dre's album,
right?
for the 90s. Okay.
Velvet Underground, that was a big, unique. That's interesting. That one's probably, interesting that it's up so high.
Okay.
The Smiths and Cure. I mean, Smiths was a big influential band for a lot of the alternative bands. That was kind of like my wife Rachel's. That's one of her favorite bands. She was kind of into that goth kind of vibe.
Is that late 80s? The Smiths?
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s, kind of really the start of alternative music, right? The non-radio kind of, you had to be cool to know it, it wasn't kind of stuff. Strokes, Metallica should be higher, in my opinion. There's your NWA.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
I'll try to blow through it. 9 Inch Nails. So again, all these all make sense to me. The end of the list is like
go back down real quick. I know we're like real long on this part of it. Madonna's Like a Prayer this low though.
Yeah, okay. You're right. Because that's another. If you talk about like the other side, like if you're going to talk about Lauryn Hill, Madonna. People dressed like her, right? Like,
right.
She was a game changer at the beat. Think about her. In my opinion, there wouldn't be Lady Gaga without Madonna. Madonna, every album she took on a different persona.
Yeah. Elton John at 78. Yeah, okay.
Patti Smith, there's Snoop Dogg, Mary J, agree with.
Casey Musgraves, isn't she relatively new?
She's pretty new, yeah.
Is that a good album? That's a country, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I personally think that the fact that there's no Garth Brooks or no Shania on here, if you're a fan of country music at all today, those are the two people that's basically
those are the two people that ushered
made it
in
like
new
pop.
Country.
Yeah, made it cool, made it pop.
Right. Hey, scroll down real quick. George Michael, Listen Without Prejudice. Real quick thing on that one. I hated this album when it first came out because it came out after Faith.
Yeah.
Which was huge, right? Mid 80s.
Yeah.
Had all that like 5 or 6 just mega hits or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this was the next one, and George was kind of he didn't want to promote like he was doing. All he was wanting to do is just get back to just making music or whatever.
Okay.
I hated this with the exception of one song, Freedom. I think it was Freedom 90 was on this one.
Okay.
And it didn't think much of it. Started listening to this in the last 3 years. I bought the record because there was some other people that were like, this is George's best album. I'm like, what? So I bought it just off of that spec because I wanted to listen. Now I have to it's right up there with Faith. It's a fantastic album. I'm just more mature that I can hear and listen to it a little differently than back in the day. So,
yeah, it's just like Solange. Did Solange belong on this list? I don't know. Again,
Usher,
Usher.
is that okay?
Yeah, Rage Against the Machine, Travis Scott, all the Eagles, Robin, probably not, I don't know. Anyway, that's our list. Yeah. So
can you tell that Greg and I have completely different? We're drawn to different kind of music, but I do think that we overlap, and where we can both say that we acknowledge certain things being good depending on like what you're into or whatever. But yeah, I would say just conservatively half of that list I'm just kind of scratching my head at.
I agree. I like to think I have an open mind when it comes to me. I mean, I have what I like, but I also understand what the masses like. And again, that most of that list I agree with. Maybe not the order, but when I'm scrolling through it, I'm like, yeah, that all makes sense. I mean, you got to have Usher on there. All the, just when you're looking through the stuff, it makes sense. But you want to play a game?
Yeah, let's play a game.
Should we transition off this? Yeah, we're gonna.
And welcome to the match game on Iller and Filthier. Tonight we talk about heavy metal.
All right.
Another beautiful jingle by Greg.
Yeah,
Studio G.
If you've stuck with us over the past few episodes, we've been bouncing around, but we going back to episode 2, I believe it was, we dug into our hair metal bands, and Brian and I were talking a little bit as how it kind of comes back to when you were struggling with trying to understand what makes a hair metal band.
Yeah.
We talked about Foreigner, people like that. You're still on the mission. Brian asks strangers every day.
I was wanting to ask you before I saw that top 100 list. I was like, did my Foreigner album make it?
No, I don't think any hair metal made that list. They weren't culture. That was cultural, but it just wasn't. It was too cheesy for the list. But yeah. So what we're gonna do is play a little match game. As we were digging into hair metal, I started telling Brian there's like numerous amount of subgenres within metal. So you have metal. But then it's probably like, I feel like pizza or movies maybe is the best way to describe it. But like pizza, right? There's pizza, but then there's flatbread pizza, there's thin crust, there's deep crust, there's Chicago style, there's St. Louis style, there's Detroit style. There's all these things. So metal's like that too. There's quite a few subgenres. So what I want to do is play a little game.
Which blows my mind because it all initially looks and sound the exact same to me. Which I would imagine. For you, every rap or every R&B or even rap and R&B are all the same. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think I get the difference. I'm going to put my professor vest on or my jacket. So Professor Greg's going to teach Brian a little bit. We're going to do this will be a game, but a little bit, I'm hoping it's a little bit of a learning. But yeah, I think it's like.
I love that we have props now. Episode 6.
Yeah. So Brian, I think I'm going to go back to the analogy I used when we did the hair metal thing.
Okay.
The pizza one wasn't good. Wine. We talked about it. Wine. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think I could sit down and you put 15 wines in front of me. I probably couldn't. I could tell them apart, but like, how there's 20, 30 different kinds of red wines. Amanda, you know this. But there's and where they're from and all those things, like the casual person's probably not going to understand. Oh, this one tastes like it's from Washington. This one tastes like it's Northern California. So I kind of feel like metals and music can be like that. There's subtle things that make it slightly different, right? And it might sound the same to you, but there's ways. So we're going to try to play a game here. This is gonna. I'm hoping. Let's see if I can find. There we go. There you go. Can you see that?
I can see it. Oh boy.
Okay. All right. So
I thought just looking at 6 when it first popped up, and maybe it's because I don't have my glasses on. I thought that was Backstreet Boys.
It's close. Good. Use that for your
All right.
Do you want me to? So let me go through the categories here.
Okay.
So. And the band, I basically took a kind of a top band from these subgenres.
Okay.
Loudwire was my source. Loudwire is like a music website, social media site, magazine type thing. They do a lot of articles, and so they did this. Where this started is the big four of thrash metal played a show a few years ago. So the big four of thrash metal is Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth. Those four bands kind of were known to, like, they were the thrash metal kings. Thrash metal is a genre, but Metallica became worldwide global sensation of a band. So these guys played a show together. So what Loudwire did is they said, what would be, they had 27 other subgenres, and so I only picked 9 because I thought these were like the main 9 that I was familiar with, and like kind of more mainstream ish. So anyway, that's where that came from. Is they put what would the other top 4, and so what I did is kind of pick maybe like the most famous, or a band that I feel like you'd either maybe recognize or most people would recognize from these genres. So we've got Cannibal Corpse representing death metal, Cradle of Filth representing goth metal, Dream Theater representing prog metal or progressive metal, Iron Maiden, which they call traditional metal or sometimes British heavy metal, Killswitch Engage from the genre metalcore, Korn, new metal, Nine Inch Nails, industrial metal, Pantera, the new wave of American heavy metal, sometimes also called groove metal, and then Slayer, of course, from thrash metal that we spoke about. And obviously we hair metal I kept off, but that was obviously, we've been through that. Sure. So I was going to see if you could try to figure out by using the numbers up there, maybe who's who. And I'm going to try to cross them off. And if you need help, I have definitions of kind of what these are too. So if you're like, gosh, what is that kind of metal? I could try to give you a little guidance.
So I'm looking at your.
Do you know any of them offhand by looking at them?
Looking at them, I don't.
You know any of the bands? Like, do you recognize at least
the band names? I've heard of Iron Maiden. I've heard of Korn, Nine Inch Nails. I think I've heard of Pantera and Slayer, but I'm thinking Pantera might be a pizza place here in St. Louis, isn't it?
I don't know, but those would be the ones I would expect you to know. Those would be. That does not surprise me, and I'm proud of you. And so you're going to get Nails, 1 gold star from me in your class today.
Ooh, nice. Please. Nine Inch Nails, I know reputation-wise because back in college at Mizzou, somebody told me that if you hear Nine Inch Nails playing in the room next to you, somebody's having sex. And I'm like, maybe I should listen to this Nine Inch Nails.
That's interesting. A funny story about them is their song Closer came out 30 years ago today. 30 years. That sucks. That's how old we are, Brian.
Visually, I have no idea of any of these groups, but I did know 4 or 5 of just the names of the groups.
All right. So we'll start with Nine Inch Nails.
Okay, Nine Inch Nails.
Well, yeah, I mean, you tell me, like, if you think you know who's who here.
Nine Inch Nails, it's almost like, do I rule out pictures, or I'm going to go with my gut. Nine Inch Nails, is that 5?
That is 5.
Is it? Okay.
Congratulations, Brian, with another star. You got 1. You're 1 for 1.
I'm actually kind of impressed.
Okay.
All
right. So you have knocked off industrial metal.
Which is what? Describe industrial?
Industrial metal, synths, sequencers. It's a metal that kind of dabbled into sampling, sequences, synths, visuals, a lot of visuals, like their videos, like Tool probably is considered part of this group. So that's where, the sampling, distorted vocals, and looping started becoming a thing. Jeff coming through with the Pantera pizza.
A 90-inch pie.
Damn.
I knew that sounded familiar. So maybe I don't know Pantera, but I know the pizza place. And the 90-inch pie sounds really good.
Jeff, that would go good with that mule from Mallory's. So great job, Brian. Yeah, industrial metal off the list.
Quick question of all of this type of music. Do you think that this industrial metal is more in line with what I would listen to?
No.
No? Okay.
Um, Probably not. I mean,
Okay.
it's all metal at the end of the day.
But I'm just like, if you were to recommend to me, like, hey, of all of these, try industrial metal. That's probably more in line with what you would like.
Yeah, no, I'd say
No?
new metal would be more your only because of the hip hop influence. So new
Okay.
metal grew from Southern California alternative metal, and
Okay.
and it really formed from like funk and hip hop and industrial. So there's a little connection to new metal. So maybe see if you
Is
can
new metal
find.
kind of what your old band used to be?
I've played in a band similar to that. Like, yeah, new metal is your
Ill
Korn.
Filth? Is that not new metal?
Yeah, it dips into that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. New metal. You
Can
can
I get points
consider
for that?
Rage. I'll give you a half a star. I'll give you a half a star for recognition. Yeah. So see if you can do new metal. So that would be Korn in this picture. But
Korn
your
is
Limp
new metal.
Bizkits, maybe Rage Against the Machine could be considered that. At Linkin Park, it's more of the DJ hip hop kind of influenced metal.
All right, Korn. And I know they're relatively, I mean, I was going to say relatively new. They're not, but.
And just to throw a wrinkle into this, by the way, there's 9 bands and 10 photos. So just wanted to give you, this is
Was that an oversight or?
No,
Okay.
This was purposeful. This is 201 class. This isn't 101.
Okay, so I'm trying to find Korn.
Korn and new metal. Yeah. If you think about what you said earlier, that's my professor tip.
What did I say earlier?
Well, this music came out early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay. Korn.
Hip hop influenced. Southern California vibe.
It's not 6, is it?
It is 6.
It is 6. Okay.
It is 6.
And it's only because you kept telling me kind of a hip hop vibe, and I'm like, okay, which one of these is the hip hop vibe?
I feel like those are the 2 I feel like you should get. So I feel like the rest is going to go down. You're like the Wolves. You started 2-0, and now it's all fucking downhill.
Which one is the British one? Because there's a couple pictures here that just look like a bunch of British guys.
Yeah. So Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden. Okay.
So traditional British influence. Yeah, it's more of a sound. It's just more like that they came over. A lot of that music. There was just a big influx of like British invasion music.
Iron Maiden. I'm trying to decide between 2 and 10. British heavy metal. Is it 2?
It is 2.
Okay.
God dang, Brian, I'm proud of you. You're 3 for 3. What the hell? All right.
Oh man. I should do this with you with 90s R&B groups or
That's
something.
fine. That's
All
fine.
right. So what's the next one you think I'd be able to get?
What about goth metal? So goth metal, it's gloomy, romantic, symphonic, variety of vocals. There is a lot of female vocalists in this genre, but not in these pictures.
Okay.
So I don't want that to throw you off. I don't think. Yeah. But yeah, goth metal.
Goth, I'm thinking when you're saying goth, I'm thinking really over the top and the makeup and is it 4?
Yep. All
okay.
Right. Good job, man. 4 for 4. Yep, you got that right. So where we are now, we've still got new wave American heavy metal. We've got death metal, progressive metal, and metalcore. Well, and thrash. So yeah, we still you've got 4. So you got 5 left. Prog metal, death metal, new wave metal, metalcore, and thrash metal. And these are tough because they're similar.
All right, so let's do prog metal because
okay.
You said that something on the notes is something like 70s.
Yeah, so it started from the late 70s progressive rock. It's elaborate, lengthy compositions. So these bands have been around a little bit longer.
Okay.
It's like math metal. It's very when they say like they're lengthy compositions. A lot of the songs are super long, and that doesn't help you. Like the images aren't going to help you. I think you got the images.
Lengthy isn't like the songs are
long, and just they're very talented. Like what these guys are like great musicians. So just explaining you what prog is, it won't help you with the picture. I don't think.
I'm going to go with 10 just because that's the only thing that looks 70s to me.
That's a good guess. Nope, it's not. Do you want to? I'll give you another shot at it.
Okay. And it's
We'll-
not
we'll give
2.
you
That
we'll
would
give
be
you
the
a
other
2 strikes.
70s group.
Nope, it's not 2.
I already
So you
got that. So once I
yeah.
pick that picture, it's ruled out, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
correct.
okay.
So you've got 1 strike. I'll give you 3 strikes, before we.
All right. It's got to be somebody then that's kind of old. And so it's going to have to come down to either 1 or 8. I'm going to go with 8.
It's not 8. Do you want me to give it to you? Or
Yeah.
do you want,
Well,
all right, so
is
it's
it
going to be
1?
9.
9?
9. Yeah, progressive metal is 9.
Wow. Okay.
Progressive, that's Dream Theater. They are a very well-known group. They all went to like Berkeley School of Music. Like they're just super, super talented dudes. So that's 9.
Okay.
So that was progressive. So you've got new wave of heavy metal, death metal, thrash metal left. 4 pictures. So you've got, let me go. So you've got 1. So band 1. You've got
Yep.
band 3.
Okay.
You've got band 7. These are what's left, is what I'm saying.
Right,
So
right.
1, 3, 7, 8, and 10 are left.
Let's do the one. Did you say it was like Cookie Monster?
Yeah, death. So that's death metal. Death metal is very abrasive and uninviting form of metal. It's rose from thrash metal in the 80s, but it's just super aggressive. Like you can't understand. It's like. Did you ever see Ace Ventura?
I know of the movie. It just
Okay, you just don't remember.
I'm not,
Okay.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
not my.
Okay.
thing.
There's a scene in that where one of these bands is in there, but
I'm gonna say 7.
no, that's a good guess. But I'll give you another one. But no, it wasn't 7. They're scary. If that like, I feel like death metal is kind of like you said, it's just
The scariest ones on here are 7. 8.
8.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Cannibal Corpse.
Cannibal Corpse. And what that like 99% of these guys are all like really, really nice guys and stuff. And it's just this is just the
Yeah, I would say so. I mean,
persona
a lot of,
that they do, but then if you know them,
Yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, come have.
I
a
mean,
beer with us.
everything death metal is like I played in a death metal band and when I was like 19, and it's just all about the gore, and it's all imagery. It's just to be shock. It's like
Sure.
shock, almost like a shock thing, All right, so you've
Out of
got
curiosity, is Marilyn Manson anything like this or no?
no.
Okay.
That would be because you wouldn't consider them metal. I mean, they're a little more. It's hard to say. That's a good question where they fall. They probably fall a little more in the industrial because actually,
Are they? Okay.
some of the guys in 9 Inch Nails played with Marilyn Manson. There's some crossover there.
Okay.
So yeah, they're probably, but they're not quite metal, I guess you could say. Because then there's that fine line between metal and hard rock,
Okay.
Because a lot of these bands aren't on the radio, for example. There's almost none of these, like Korn's on the radio, Pantera sometimes, 9 Inch Nails, of course, but the rest of these bands, you're not going to, I guess Maiden's been on the radio a little bit.
These are some like obscure Sirius XM channels that.
Yeah,
Right,
yep,
okay.
yep, there is. You'll find, there's a death metal channel. I mean, there's the threat, you'll find that. So you've got new wave American metal with Pantera, and you've got metalcore, Killswitch Engage, and thrash metal Slayer. Slayer's been around a long time. Pantera's been around a long time. Killswitch Engage, that's a little more. Metalcore is a little newer. It started in the 90s. It's a fusion of extreme metal and punk rock, so it's a little newer vibe. So that's newer, whereas thrash and also the new wave of American heavy metal kind of came out in
Metalcore, I'm going to go with 3.
That is correct.
Okay.
You are correct. Well done, sir. Well done, dude. You're like 5 for 7. That's pretty freaking impressive. So you've got two left. You've got band 1, band 10, and band 7.
1. 10.
So you just have thrash, and so you got Pantera and Slayer left. Slayer was the thrash metal band, and Pantera
10 should be 10. looking at them, I should be able to get them.
Yeah. Who do you think they would be?
And you're saying, what do I have left? The two that I have left?
Thrash metal and new wave American heavy metal.
I'm going to go 10 with new wave American metal.
No, I can't. I won't tell you who that is. I'll tell you your answers are 1 and 7 for the two left, just for time's sake.
All right.
So you got Slayer and Pantera. Got brothers Vinny and Dimebag were in Pantera.
Pantera is number 1.
No.
I was like, those two guys look like they could be brothers in the middle.
That's true. They do. No, one is Slayer.
Okay.
Legendary band. Just awesome band. I listened to them the day I was mowing grass. And then Pantera is number 7. Unfortunately, those the two brothers are deceased, which is super sad, but they were an awesome band. Number 10, do you know who 10 is? They were not listed here.
Is 10 Foreigner?
10 is Foreigner. Congrats. And you want to see, like, okay, take a good look at 10, right?
That is hilarious.
Okay. And remember, you said is Foreigner hair metal. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so just stare at 10, get it in your eyes. Do they fit on this page?
I'm sure you can maybe find a picture to where they look more like this, but
I know I did grab the oldest one I could find.
That is hilarious.
Oh, I was just dying every time you're like, is Foreigner hair metal? I'm like, no. And then I was like, this will be good. This will get him.
Oh, that is great. That was fun.
Oh, man.
I think we have a lot of homework to do listening. And I think maybe after today's episode, we cut maybe a short video and ask people in the top 10 who are the most controversial. And those will be the ones that you and I go listen to a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be fun to we both maybe take some homework and go listen to some stuff, and I think it'd be fun to pick some albums to listen to together, even, you know.
I really do, and I mean this. I want to kind of expand and discover some new music.
Yeah,
and at least give it a chance. And so that's what I trust what Greg can kind of open my mind to with some things that I think he knows a little bit of my style, what I'd like, and maybe what would be a good opening for me. So I think this is interesting that on our show, Iller and Filthier here, that I have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about some music that I haven't really been exposed to because of him.
Yeah, and I like, to your point, I don't know if it's age or what, but as I'm getting older now, I like listening to, we've talked about this before, but I like listening to bands I like talk about, or when I hear people talk about what they're inspired by. And so I think it's fun to listen to. That's how I got into Zeppelin. You know, I listened to Zeppelin for that reason. It's like, everybody loves Zeppelin. I need to go dive in, listen to their albums. You know, and so that's why I like lists like this, because I will, you know, I probably need to give Radiohead another listen someday.
Was it Zeppelin that was recording at Apple Studios when the Beatles were doing something? I could have sworn I heard.
I think because they would have crossed paths a little bit, I believe.
Because when their name came up on a McCartney thing where he was talking about Zeppelin being in the other studio while he was there.
Yeah, I think
maybe it was when he was recording his first solo or something.
It could have been, yeah, because I would think Zeppelin would have been a little bit after.
But he had a lot of really nice things to say about that group. It's a group, right? It's not a person.
Yeah, correct.
Group, yeah.
Because I believe Jimmy Page was in the Byrds before Led Zeppelin, and the Byrds would have been more in kind of the Beatles era. And then Zeppelin Zeppelin was more 70s for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think, Led Zeppelin 1 probably would, that had to be a little bit earlier.
All right. Well, this was a fun episode. I know.
Yeah, man.
I could see why the list is controversial.
It's intended to be, right?
Yeah. And it maybe it's getting us to do what they were wanting us to do. We're going to go listen to Lauryn Hill's album, or at least
Yeah.
I am. You just listened to it. You said
Yeah.
it was pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good listen.
I'll go listen to it, and then maybe we'll ask people what other albums in the top 10 controversial that Greg and I need to go listen to.
Yeah, and we can. We don't even have to argue this point, but the fact that Lords of Acid is not on that list somewhere,
Ugh.
like at 69 or
What
somewhere.
What kind of music is Lords of Acid?
It is, that's dance DJ ish kind of vibe. It's techno ish, electronica maybe.
Is it?
It's more electronic because it's got like guitars and rock to it, but it's got that electronic.
And you were listening to that in college?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
Every once in a while.
Yeah. All right, Greg. Fun episode 6 in the bag, right? Can't believe we've gotten all that done. Again, every Thursday night, other than the days we don't do it on Thursday night, but at 8 p.m. Central Time, Greg and I are going to be here having fun with all sorts of stuff, but a lot of music. I think music is one of those things to where it's fun to talk about. We all have our opinions on it. And anything else? You want to tell people where they can find Iller and Filthier?
Yeah, all your favorite podcast locations. Of course, we're on Instagram. We're on what do we got? Threads, TikTok. We got to do a lot of stuff on TikTok and the gram. MySpace, Tinder, all those things is where you can find us.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Iller and Filthier.